So land acknowledgement, as in I mentioned last time, I live in Calgary, Alberta, which I want to acknowledge is the home and place of the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Districts 5 and 6, and all people who have Treaty 7 as their home in southern Alberta, acknowledging my own responsibility to know the truth about the harm that was caused and continues to be caused to Indigenous people, and moving forward in a spirit of partnership, reconciliation, and collaboration, always keeping that in mind. I also mentioned last time, I've been a consultant for over 35 years. I had my consulting firm, Barrington Research Group, specializing in program evaluation. And I've written or co-authored 2 books. The one on consulting, startup, and management, of course, is the backbone of the information that I'm presenting and that Dawn and I presented earlier this fall on pricing. I just wanted to mention too that evaluation time, which I co-authored with my colleague Beverly Triana Tremaine, is a very useful resource. Now, I have some friends and colleagues in the States with a consulting firm, and they use this book as a book club. And they, chapter by chapter, they went through and met and discussed it and said that it's really the best resource for them. They keep it on their desk, and whenever they're starting a new project, there's lots of resources in there. So if you're wondering, gee, how do I do an evaluability assessment, or I'm doing a needs assessment, what should I do, or how to communicate with my client, or what the heck is mixed methods, all those sorts of topics are covered in this book. So today we're into part 2 of our Craft Your Marketing Strategy Skills for Success. Just to recap what we went over last time, we talked about the skills side. We talked about a river journey. You're in a canoe going down a river, and on one side are all your skills and your buried treasure, what you didn't know you had that was so useful. This came home to me this week because I was remembering all the volunteer board work that I've done over the years and how useful it has been, not only to understand how boards operate, but also to understand how organizations function and the differing roles that staff and board members play in, so on, and some of the financial issues not-for-profits face. So I guess that was part of my buried treasure. And to be honest, I never put that in my elevator pitch or mentioned it. It was just background information, but I think it's the sort of thing to bring forward because it's a special skill or strength that you have that others don't. So we identified your skills and strengths and thought about your creativity, and I hope developed a draft elevator pitch. Now, if you happen to be new to the webinar today and weren't here last week, all the worksheets are provided. Dawn's posting them, and so you can work through the first part with the various worksheets that we covered. Now, the elevator pitch was number 5, and you were to complete it in 25 words or less. So I hope you've had a chance to mull that one over, think about it, maybe practice it with your family or your colleagues. And because what we're going to do now is take 10 minutes to work as a group and to actually practice your pitch and see and find out where that slide disappeared to. Okay, anyway, so there's the 3 C's that we're talking about. 3 C's. And so to be clear, concise, and compelling. And so when you're meeting in your small groups, I just want to remind you of just a couple of little tips. One is to please, put your phone away so you can give your colleagues your full attention. And then make sure that everybody in the group has a chance equally to speak and share. So in 10 minutes, you have 4 or you have 3 people in your group, figure that out, let them do their elevator pitch, and then use the 3 C's. Is it clear, concise, and compelling, to provide them with some feedback. And finally, be gentle. Like, we're all in this together and nobody is perfect and we're all learning. This is day 2. We're going to talk about the environment side. So this is the other side of the river journey, which I'll show you my picture again in a second. So we critique the elevator pitch, and we're going to think about your market landscape and define some evolving marketing needs using complexity theory, among others. And then start to develop a guerrilla marketing strategy. So here is our river journey, the same picture as before. And so this is lovely and calm. And yet by the end of this session, you're going to be talking about guerrilla marketing. And so it may not be quite so calm, and you don't know what's hiding in those bushes or what you're going to run into when you go around the curve in the river there. And I would say, I'm just thinking, reading the newspaper today, thinking about the environment in which we're currently living. You know, the Canadian dollar is 71 cents at the moment, right? Upcoming President Trump is going to add a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports. These are going to have huge effects. Not only that, but the whole immigration horrendous nightmare, which is directly going to affect us. So these things, there's going to be a huge amount of disruption coming forward into the new year. And how is that going to play out with you as an evaluator? There's no way you can possibly have some nice, neat document that you can say, here's my marketing plan. You're going to have to be quick on your feet. And you're going to have to be very responsive to whatever needs your clients may have. This is going to be exciting and challenging and a difficult time. That's my prediction. So hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll see. So your destination is business success. So you're going down the river. You don't know what's around that corner or the next one and the next one. And of course, the weather could change radically, suddenly. And we've had a chance to reflect on our skills and experience. Now we need to think about the needs of the evaluation market as it stands at the moment. But this is something you're going to continually do as you're going forward, at least quarterly. You should be, rethinking your marketing plan and how you're going to attract new clients. And then you're going to steer between what your skills and experience are and what the market situation is, and find that fine line where you can steer your canoe to success. So let's take a look at worksheet 6, which is the environment side. And so if you don't have your worksheets, just download them from the chat. So in worksheet 6, I'm just going to quickly go over some of the highlights here, that the hills on the environment side of your river journey, the highest level might be general evaluation trends and current market forces. At the mid-level, it could be your regional context. I mean, I know I was talking to Joey, he is working in Quebec. I know Don works in British Columbia. We're all over the place. The regional context and economy is different from the national one. And then what's hidden in the reeds down at the water level? The needs of clients in your area. What are nonprofits, for example, running into right now? Maybe funding is really difficult and they're having a lot of trouble. So things to think about, and you can do this worksheet later when you're having a close meeting with yourself, a detailed meeting with yourself about your marketing strategy. And while I'm thinking of that, I should say, I often recommend to consultants to give themselves a personal retreat and go away somewhere for the day where you're not going to be bothered by the phone, by your family, by your friends, by your work, by your clients. Take a day, and you can be nice to yourself. I mean, I've had people take themselves to a lovely resort overnight and just work on marketing and put your plan together. Put together your marketing tools, put together your elevator pitch, take the time. And you're not going to regret the fact that you've had the time to actually think through these things. It's not off the cuff. Off the cuff could fall very flat. So who's talking about general evaluation trends and what are they saying? For this, you need to be hooked into various, like the Canadian Evaluation Society. If you're a member of the American Evaluation Society Association, just reading what evaluators are thinking and talking about thinking back to the conference we had last year or in the spring, what were the sessions about? What are the topics top of mind? What best practices in evaluation are gaining new traction? And what kinds of clients are using those approaches? Are there any organizations in my area that need that type of support? And if you can identify a few where you're starting to see your skills and their needs are meeting, how can you get in touch with them? So that's worksheets 6. And we're going to carry on here. I want to talk just briefly a little bit more about the environment, about adaptive systems, complexity theory, 21st century context, and weak signals. This is a little bit of theory, but as evaluators, we love theory. So think about your environment from a more theoretical perspective. First of all, adaptive systems. Of course, I love Michael Patton and his work. He talked a lot about adaptive systems where goals are emergent and changing. Well, believe me, reading the newspaper on a daily basis, you can see how national goals are emerging and changing. And so must yours. Time periods are fluid and forward-looking rather than artificially imposed. And this is an interesting one to think about from a consultant's point of view. Like maybe you shouldn't be thinking in terms of 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year projects. Maybe you should be chunking them into smaller pieces. I found, for example, one thing I did was to offer a client an evaluability assessment. I said, well, are you sure you're ready to do an evaluation? We could do an evaluability assessment first. They're inexpensive, they don't take very long, and they see whether or not your organization is actually set up and has the information needed in order to conduct an effective evaluation. And then I chopped the work up into sections so that by the end of the first year, they had already had an evaluability assessment, and then part 1 of the evaluation was complete, and they already had reports which had been coming along. They'd been involved in writing them and so on, and they had product by the end of the first year. And at that point, it was a possibility that they might not want to continue working with me, or they might want to continue, or I might not want to work with them any longer. I might have had severe doubts about working with this client. So chopping it up into smaller sections and saying, okay, let's reassess here and see how we want to move forward. And of course, if you are doing a 3-year study, you're not going to end up where you thought you were. Things are going to be so changed by then that it's best to keep it as fluid and flexible as possible as you're going along. We strive for innovation, change, and learning as well as new work. We have to move to that middle space of emergence and adaptation, and that's our canoe. That's where we are. We're in the middle, moving forward. So that's the kind of developmental marketing plan we're looking for. Secondly, complexity theory, again, Patton, but thinking in non-linear ways, not just linear. I know you can do a survey. I know you can do a focus group. I know you can analyze data. But what else is there that you could be doing that might be more informative? And emergence, patterns of interaction, self-organization, the whole is larger than the parts. The system can be both turbulent and coherent at the same time. Now, get your mind around that one. How is it possible to be turbulent and coherent at the same time? Adaptive, interactive elements respond and adapt to each other in their environment. So your organizations are going to be changing just as you get into the evaluation. I had one evaluation where the minute I started up and sort of walked in and said hello, the government had made a huge change in funding. My plans were out the window, and I had to start over in terms of a very developmental approach, running alongside the client as they decided what it was they could do to respond to government demands. Uncertainty, emergent and adaptive self-organizations create unpredictable, uncontrollable, and unknowable conditions and interactions. Not dealing with uncertainty and the unexpected makes things worse. So you have to know it's going to be uncertain, living with ambiguity. And co-evolutionary, as interacting adaptive agents, self-organized connections emerge that evolve as part of the whole system. So working with your client together, you may come up with some new ideas that neither of you would have thought about on your own. I think that's really food for thought. Then what's the 21st century context? Well, I already gave you a rundown on disruption, but other themes right now: diversity, cultural know-how and local knowledge, inclusivity and equity, interdisciplinary focus. Like, who else could you bring in to work with you on your evaluation? Somebody from another profession or another field that might be a specialist in a particular area. So for example, once I was doing an evaluation of a Hep C program, and I got some medical people from the area to come and educate us in terms of what the key factors were and how we should approach working with clients and so on. Sector collaboration and partnerships. Sustainability, our whole environment is so fraught right now and so fragile. Dawn and I have talked about the forest fires in British Columbia and in Alberta and the effect that they've had on people and the economy, and who knows what's going to happen next year. Thinking about so the climate and environmental husbandry, how can we take care of what we've got? The fact that we belong to a global community, try to reach out a little more to international evaluators, find a way to see who's working in areas that you're working in and how could you possibly connect with them and share learning. Innovation generally. So there's tons of stuff going on that's really useful and exciting, but sometimes we feel like we're over here doing our little work and the rest of the world is over here. And what I'm saying is, no, you're working in that world. So bring it into your work in an effective way. And one more thought, this is mine, but I'm talking about weak signals here. I was at a CES conference, I think it was in St. John's. No, St. John. Which one was it? What's the one in Newfoundland? At St. John? Yeah. So I went to dinner, and this was a painting by Grant Boland, and it was huge, the wall-size painting of a sardine can, right? And I'm sitting at this table looking at this sardine can for the whole evening. And so I had lots of time to reflect on it and to think about what else is in the picture that you don't know about. What are the weak signals? What we tend to do is we norm out the noise, we norm out the outliers. You know, we have a bell curve mentality, and those that are on the outer reaches are the ones that we really don't pay too much attention to. And yet that may be where the key information is. What else is in the frame that you have not yet acknowledged or noticed? And how can we use that white space? Anyway, let's turn briefly to worksheet number 7, which is using complexity to create your developmental marketing plan. So what am I responding to in the environment? How am I incorporating the environment into my work? What patterns do I see emerging? And then, so how can I adapt my work to meet the needs of those emerging patterns? And what do I know or what don't I know? What do I expect? What don't I expect? You know, what kind of blinkers am I wearing? What can't I see and should be seen? Now, how are you going to find that out? You're going to have to talk to other people. So it's a question of working with other consultants and people working in other fields and trying to be more expansive in terms of really picking people's brains about what they think about what's going on. So for you, this might mean some coffee dates, taking people out for coffee or a glass of wine and sitting and talking to them about, from their perspective, how they see the environment emerging. And so what do the weak signals tell me? How can I use disruption to my advantage? How can we work with uncertainty in such a way that we, you know, help our clients and benefit from that uncertainty? I can't stress communications enough, frequent communications and collaboration involving a client in the decisions of the evaluation as you're going along, not just going away and doing your work and coming back with a nice, neat final report. If that's the way you're working, you're not being collaborative at all. Okay, so, and keeping your client surprised of what's going on. I provided monthly progress reports, and I billed on a monthly basis. And so they had a product every month, and I was able to bill and support and pay for my staff and so on as a result of that. And I explained that going into it. You're going to get a monthly progress report, an update on where we are in terms of the evaluation plan, any unexpected findings, any surprises, any emerging problems, and so on. So they always knew what I knew. So there were no surprises. How can I work in an adaptive coevolutionary way? So I think that's really what I'm trying to stress today. Where do I start? And what's my biggest learning? So then yesterday, I had an aha moment and I thought to myself, well, I'm not giving you a template for a marketing plan, and you may go away from this workshop and feel not satisfied because I should have given you a template for a marketing plan. So I did some research online to see what's up, and I went through all the usual business type experts. They're willing to give you a template. Yeah, for $39.99, you too can have their template, or $299. So there are lots of offers out there, but it's the sort of thing where you end up with a nice report with an executive summary and, a whole bunch of topics and so on, which are not going to help you in this environment that I just finished explaining to you. By the time you've written that report, everything will have changed again. So don't bother. That's what I think. Anyway, then I lucked out and I found this book. Well, first of all, I found chapter 4. And I wonder, Dawn, can you copy the links and put them into the chat for people? Okay. So there's a book, it's not even new, 2005, called Guerrilla Marketing for Consultants. Now, I have not read this book. All I've read is chapter 4, which I found yesterday, and it had no name on it and no book name, and I had to go to Chat GPT to say, who wrote this? And it was very helpful and told me. Then I went to Amazon, and so here's the link if you're at all interested in purchasing this book, but it's not necessarily recommended because I haven't read it, but I just love the ideas in this book. These authors are Levinson and McLaughlin. And so when a client comes to you, some of the things that they're thinking are, I don't know who you are. I don't know your company. I don't know your company's product. I don't know what your company stands for. I don't know your company's customers. I don't know your company's record. I don't know your company's reputation. Now, what is it you want to sell me? And the answer to all that, of course, is going to be in your elevator pitch to some extent. And so they go on from there with some really interesting ideas, and I'll just go over a couple of them. Number one, you can't be an expert on everything, so don't try to be all things to all clients. Specialize. Focus on a few things that you do exceptionally well. And we thought about that when we were doing our buried treasure analysis. What were the projects that you loved the most? What was it about them that was so great? That's where you get your passion from. And so that's what you take forward to share with clients. And then have a clear statement of your special ed expertise. Well, we worked on that. That's your elevator statement. But here's one, a final, clean, finished one. Not for an evaluator, really, but I modified it a bit. I help nonprofit organizations strengthen donor loyalty, enhance board dedication, and expand community commitment by using targeted evaluation strategies. Now, notice in this statement that the focus here is on the client and the client's needs, not on what I'm able to provide. And it's also on outcomes, strengthening donor loyalty, enhancing board dedication, expanding community commitment. So it's easier for them to understand what you have to offer if you tell them how what they have is going to improve. Does that am I making any sense? Yeah, Brian? Yeah, thanks. Okay. All right, so based on this book, here are 8 mistakes. Now, so some of the things that we've been talking about maybe aren't so great. One is quality service. They're expecting quality service. Don't tell them you're going to give them quality service. And they wouldn't even be talking to you if they didn't already think that's what they were going to get. Secondly, price is not the clincher. So trying to be the cheapest is never a good idea. And in this book, even though it was 2005, there were statistics about what percentage of consultants didn't get projects with the lowest bid. Certain evaluation tools, approaches, methods are expected. So again, somebody, I don't know if that person is on our call today or not, but she said, technical expertise is not the number one thing that they're looking for because they already expect that I've got that. Service responsiveness, again, it's a yes, it's an expectation. Credentials, project-related experience is more relevant. Now, of course, I've been deeply involved with developing and supporting the Credentialed Evaluator program, so I'm going to have a problem with this one. But I think that having a Credentialed Evaluator designation, along with your university degrees, are just a given. It's like the platform from which you operate. And so I think it's an expectation. And those of you who haven't got your CE yet, I certainly encourage you to do that. Get yourself a mentor and get started. Importance of the client, again, you don't need to stress the client's important because obviously it's true they're important. You're trying to persuade them to hire you. You don't need to tell them they're important. Testimonials and references, what they said is provide a list of tested clients that they can call if they wish. So you might just, include just in terms of not really references, but here's a list of some of our recent clients and they would be happy to talk to you. Of course, you have to do the background work to make sure that they know that you're looking for work from this particular organization and they would be expecting a call. It gives the potential client more choice rather than saying, here, just talk to these 2 people who I happen to go to university with and roomed with and so on, and they've known me for 30 years, and have nothing to do with evaluation, but they like me. That's not the kind of references that we're looking for. And instilling fear and uncertainty to intensify their need is a really super bad idea. Don't make them nervous, okay? You don't want to make them nervous at all. We're nervous enough, thank you. Okay, so here are some marketing strategies that our new friends say work. Undisputed competence and relative expertise. So I think that's one of the things that I've been stressing is you've got some real strengths amongst your skills, and those are the ones that you should be pitching. And simplicity, like I said, chunk your services, and so that they can take them for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year and then reassess and decide if they want to continue. So there's an out for them and there's an out for you. Educate clients at their own speed, not at yours. So, if you're working with people who aren't evaluation savvy, don't fill their head with a whole lot of evaluation terminology because that will only scare them. And so use common day language. We were talking about that last week. And my suggestion to you was, if you're having trouble with something, some paragraph or something you've written, you feel it's too technical, you could ask ChatGPT, or you could use Hemingway, which is very helpful. It gives you the grade level of the information that you're providing and so on. So my bias right now is that I'm trying to learn to be a creative writer. So I'm really focusing on the written word and the importance and power of the written word. And guarantee satisfaction. So how are you going to do that? Because they may not be satisfied with the findings. They may hate the findings. What if you say, you made a terrible mistake heading in this direction? How can you guarantee? So I'm not sure about this one. I think this one we need further discussion. It's a great idea, but we just have to come up with a strategy about how to do that. Give something away for free. In other words, add it on to your proposal. Now, one thing that I always did was that in addition to the final report, that I would give them a PowerPoint with the key points from the findings, with the charts and graphs and so on. You could offer staff training, perhaps at the beginning of the evaluation, to give them, here's a 2-hour session on what's a logic model or whatever, just to get them started, but give free stuff to make, it supports your desire to really help and serve your client. Another idea, or additional reports along the way, like a field report, which just has the responses. I had a mentee this year who was really well experienced with press kits, and I'd never even heard of a press kit before. But you can look them up online. What do you include in a press kit? It would be a PowerPoint. It would be the wording for a couple of letters that your client at the end of the project could, massage and put right into their letter to their boss or to the board or to their funder or whatever, so that they don't have to rethink what you've already done. It's easy enough to do, I think, and could definitely be worthwhile. Of course, stressing your honesty and ethics, and CES is very big on the current values, which I think you could incorporate into any proposal. Our use of ethics, our use of a credential, and so on. And connection to a professional organization is really important. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if you weren't a member of CES, so I think that goes without saying, but your client doesn't know that, so you should tell them that you're a member of this professional organization and have been for X number of years. And it's even better if you're involved somehow, like with your local chapter, doing something, or doing presentations for them. One unique benefit from hiring you. What have you got? We've been thinking about this. What have you got that nobody else has? And how, of course, innovation is so important. And so which of all of this stuff that you're providing them will be innovative. And so, but just don't jump on the bandwagon and sound like every other evaluator. Try to be a bit of a contrarian and say, yeah, but we've been thinking about white space. So what else is there that I have that I can offer? And finally, a 7-sentence marketing plan. So it's not a template, but it's a suggestion of a way to get going. Explain the purpose of your, and this is for you, okay? So you don't need a document with an executive summary, but you need an expansion of these 7 topics for yourself, which is what you would do when you took your day-long retreat and, went to some nice resort nearby just for yourself. Okay, explain the purpose of your marketing. What are the substantive benefits that you provide clients? And who are your target markets? If you've been thinking about the environment, taking people out to lunch and talking to them, who do they work for? Who do they know is looking for evaluations? Taking out past clients, how are they doing? I got a lot of work that was knockoff work from clients that I already had. It was a big part of my portfolio. Your niche and your work culture, what's special about you, special about the way you work, your availability, and so on. And marketing tools. This area will take work, and this is what you can be doing when you're on your retreat, thinking about marketing. What kind of tools? For example, I've got a new website, gailbarrington.ca, which I've been working at over the last few months, that not only has my professional latest things like links to webinars and, feedback from people who've read my books and so on, but I've got a new page that's creative writing, because that's what I'm doing now. And so I'm trying to beef up that part of my career, with information about things that I've had published in the creative writing field. And I've even included, right now, I just included a pop-up story. So if you're looking for entertainment at some point, you could find a short story there to read. So marketing, the new website then led me to a new business card with a new feel and a new, color frame set of colors and printing and so on. So all of this takes time, and it's worth it, because when you have a website, you're established. your firm's identity, of course, is all of what we've been talking about. And finally, but perhaps most importantly, how big is your marketing budget? We didn't talk about that today, but you need to set aside a little bit of money and then perhaps find out how much does it cost to have a website if you don't have one now. Business cards are cheap, like they're like $25 for 100, so that should never hold you back. But I suggest you get a designer to work with you, and that may start to ramp up the costs of $100 an hour or whatever they charge to help you design a really attractive website, a really attractive business card. And then I guess you can take it further and think about, what does your email template look like? And could you change that to make it more attractive? So marketing can go on forever in terms of the tools that support you, but only do what you can afford. Anyway, I wish you all the best. I know you're going to do a great job. Be sure to give yourself enough time to actually think about marketing. And good luck. Thanks for listening.